Hello, this is McD the Beast, and this is McD Sports 4 coming to you today with my top 25 for Week 4 of the 2022 college football season. Before I continue, don't forget to hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. Very appreciate if you do that. Really trying to grow the channel. Um, a lot of interesting results for Week 3. A lot of blowouts actually. Not a lot of interesting games in my opinion. Um, you did have that wild finish in Appalachian State. But outside of that, not really a memorable week for college football here in week 3. Um, so let's just get into it. The top 25. We'll kick it off with number 25, BYU. They got ran out the building by Oregon, 41-20. I was wrong about BYU. I gotta admit it. They were number 5 in my poll. I thought this team was a top 10 team, a legit top 10 team. I was absolutely and positively wrong about BYU. They still have that big win against Baylor. They have Arkansas later in the week. More on them in a second. But I really was wrong on BYU. I did not see this coming. I actually had BYU pulling off the minor upset on the road in this one, and I was surely wrong about that. So I gotta kind of just go ahead and just admit I was wrong about BYU. Eat some crow, but I moved them down 20 spots. I still think they're a top 25 team, so number 25 BYU. Number 24 Florida. 31-28 win over South Florida. Only one problem. South Florida is a bad team. I moved Florida down one spot. It does help your resume a little bit, Florida, that Utah went out more than them in a second and beat San Diego State 35-7. But um, in my opinion, I just wasn't riled by Florida. They did get the win, but it wasn't a convincing win. Maybe they were looking ahead to Tennessee next week, but number 24, Florida. Number 23, Florida State. They were not in the top 25 last week. I was high on Florida State coming into the season. I said this team, I think, could win 8-9 games. And listen, they're winning games in wild fashions. I'll admit they probably should have lost the LSU game. The Louisville game was a wild game on Friday night, but they're 3-0, and listen, they have 2 wins against Power 5 teams. So I put them in my top 25 and number 23. I think that you can make an argument that they are the 23rd best team in the country. From what I've seen so far, the resume is definitely there with 2 Power 5 wins. And I'm interested to see how this team does. I think they are hanging the right track. I'll admit it's not pretty, but number 23, Florida State. Number 22, North Carolina. I know. I don't think they played this past week, but I did move them up a few spots. Big game against Notre Dame down the stretch. So, in this upcoming week. So we'll see what happens there. But number 22, North Carolina. Number 21, Wake Forest. I did not move them. 1 point win over Liberty. Liberty is a good team, so I'm not really going to fault Wake Forest that much. They definitely have issues defensively, though, Wake Forest, like they did last year. But they got past Liberty. It was probably one of their toughest games on the schedule, to be completely honest with you. Because Liberty will be a lot of teams in the ACC, let's be real. So number 21, Wake Forest. Now the top 20. Number 20, Arkansas. I'm moving down 3 spots. Bobby Petrino and the Missouri State Bears, I think they'll call it the Bears, went in there and gave Arkansas a game. Arkansas was down 17-0 at one point in this game. Arkansas did come back and win at 38-27, but at the same time, very disappointing performance. Some people had I watched a poll that had Arkansas number 1 in their poll because they have wins against 2 very good teams. Okay, I thought there was issues with Arkansas watching them in both of those games. If you want my honest opinion, I thought it was shown in this game. Um, so I dropped them 3 spots. They're still undefeated. I don't know who they get next week, but number 20, Arkansas. Number 19, Oregon. Oregon, listen, they lost to Georgia 49-3, but they went out and blew out BYU. So, in my opinion, you faced 2 top 5 teams. You got ran out the building by one, and you ran the other team out the building. I picked you guys in upper 19. I do think you guys deserve to be in the top 25. It's going to be interesting watching them down the stretch. The Pac-12, I think, is kind of USC and everybody else more than that in a second. But you have Oregon State, you have Washington, who got a big win against Michigan State. Arizona schools look better than expected. Utah's still there. So the Pac-12 is still it's going to be interesting to see what Oregon does. So number 19, Oregon. Number 18, Miami. I dropped them 7 spots. Um, kind of a disappointing loss against on the road against Texas A&M. Um, Offensively, they just ran up, I think, against a very good defense, and they just struggled with that. Tough environment to play. I still think they're a top 25 team, but I moved them down 7 spots to number 18. Number 17, Texas. I moved you guys up 1 spot. I still think UTSA is going to win the Conference USA. I do. And I think that was a good win for Texas. I mean, I know I think the final score was 31-20. I know you wish, oh, it's UTSA, we should be blowing them out. UTSA is a good team. I know they have 2 losses on the schedule, UTSA, but they are a good team. So I moved Texas up 1 spot. I think that was actually a pretty good win for Texas, coming off a very hard fought game against Alabama. Number 16, Penn State, newly ranked. Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. I think Penn State's a top 15 team. From what I mean, for them to go down into Auburn, and let me tell you something. Auburn has some quarterback problems. And that was not a good day for Brian Harsin, a coach that I actually think will keep his job at the end of the season. That was not a good day for him. 41-12 loss for Auburn, but for Penn State, they took advantage of Auburn's mistakes big time, in my opinion. Um, they look like a top 15 team, and they're probably going to be undefeated going into Michigan. They have a game October 15th against Michigan. I expect that to be a top 10 game when that game kicks off, probably on Big Noon kickoff. But Penn State, in my opinion, I picked them 16. That was the highest I was willing to pick them before. Still have to see a little bit more. They'll probably end up in the top 15. Because they don't really have anybody on their schedule. But I'm telling you, Penn State looks scary this year. I've said 2023 was kind of the year for Penn State. This year, I think I was wrong about Penn State. I thought Penn State would be a borderline top 25 team. They look a lot better than that. Number 15, Utah. I moved them up 1 spot. Impressive win against San Diego State on the road, 35-3. San Diego State, I know, isn't as good as maybe some previous years, but impressive win on the road, 35-3. Not 35-3, 35-7. So impressive win there. I moved you guys up 1 spot. Number 14, Minnesota. The more I watch Minnesota, the more I like. They should be the favorites to win the Big Ten West, in my opinion. You look at the Big Ten West. I know Wisconsin got a big win. I know Iowa finally broke 20 points. We'll talk about Nebraska in a little bit. Illinois, I think, will be competitive. Purdue, we'll talk about them in a little bit as well. But Minnesota, I think they should be favored to win the Big Ten West. I really do. I moved them up 5 spots. I think they are a top 15 team from what I'm watching. I really do. Blowout win. I think they pitched a shutout. I think the final score was 49-0. Or did they give up a late? I think they did give up a late touchdown. But Minnesota, number 14. Number 13, NC State. You guys did be a Power 5 school in Texas Tech, 27-14. I moved you guys up 1 spot. I don't know if this team. I don't think they're a top 10 team, NC State. I don't, but if you tell me they're a top 15 team, which I think they are, I have them at number 13. I think that's where they should be at. So number 13, NC State. Number 12, Ole Miss. They pitched a shutout against Georgia Tech, 42-0. I'm going to talk more about Georgia Tech than I am Ole Miss in this one. It's over. It is absolutely over for Jeff Collins. I think he's gone at some point this season or at the end of the season. This team is nowhere near to even competing for a bowl game, in my opinion. So I just want to throw that out there. But Ole Miss, listen, they're gonna be competitive in the SEC West. I think Alabama isn't as good as perceived. And there's a lot of good teams in the SEC West. So number 12, Ole Miss. Number 11, Clemson. You beat Louisiana Tech 34-6. Louisiana Tech's not a good team, but I did move you guys up 1 spot. You did take care of business against them at the end of the day. So I moved Clemson up 1 spot. Now the top 10. Number 10, Oklahoma. I moved Oklahoma up 3 spots to number 10. Um, Let me just say this. I think they beat a really bad Nebraska team. I honestly, in my opinion, is Nebraska even going to win another game this season? I mean, you already lost Northwestern. Maybe you beat Illinois. Maybe you beat Iowa because their offense is so inept. But is Nebraska? I don't even know if Nebraska is going to win another game this season. I really don't. I can't guarantee you that they're going to win another game this season. Um, they are a bad football team. As they already fired their head coach Scott Frost. It turns out that was not the issue. And this defense is god awful from Nebraska. It's probably. I mean, people make fun of the North Carolina offense, which I have North Carolina in my top 25. I mean, the defense, the North Carolina defense, which I have in their top 25. This defense from Nebraska is horrible. It's worse than that. People made fun of Oklahoma's defense with Lincoln Riley there, and they were beat teams 55-45. This defense is worse than that. 49-14 loss for Nebraska. Oklahoma looked very impressive. I think they deserve to move up some. And to be honest, Oklahoma might be the favorites to win the Big 12. So we'll see what happens. But Oklahoma, number 10. Number 9, Oklahoma State. Very impressive win against their FCS opponent, blowing them out the building. So I moved them up 1 spot to number 9. Number 8, Baylor. The BYU loss hurts Baylor a little bit, in my opinion. So that's why I actually moved them down 1 spot. They did beat Texas State 42-7. Kind of a I did not watch the highlights of this, but I would think they would beat them by a little bit more, if you want my honest opinion. But I still think Baylor's a top 10 team. I still do. So Baylor, I moved them down 1 spot to number 8. Number 7, Kentucky. Yeah, I know it was only 31-0. I don't care. I think Kentucky might be the second best team in the SEC East. I mean, it's going to be between them and my number 6 team, Tennessee, who has a big game against Florida this upcoming week at home. And we'll pick that game for sure. But Tennessee and Kentucky, they look like top 10 teams. They do. I move each of them up 2 spots. Number 7, Kentucky. Number 6, Tennessee. I think it's a coin flip between who's better. So that's why I'm kind of doing these two as the same. I picked Tennessee ahead of Kentucky because that's why I had initially. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens throughout the season. They play Georgia, both of them. They play each other. So yeah, I think Kentucky and Tennessee, I think they are top 10 teams. I really do, so, from what I've seen so far this season. Now the top 5. Number 5, USC. Guys, it's USC and everybody else in the Pac-12. Let's be real. You look around the Pac-12, yeah, Utah. I think they do go on the road against Utah in a week or two. That's going to be an interesting game. That might be an interesting game. That Utah game, actually, it probably will be, but I will take USC in that. Oregon, I would take USC over Oregon. I would take USC over Washington. They beat up on Stanford. I'll take USC over Cal. I'll take USC over Oregon State and Washington State, who's been pretty impressive so far this season. I'll definitely take USC over UCLA. UCLA celebrating like they just won a championship after getting a last-second field goal against South Alabama, who handed them that game. I think USC will actually blow them out. I think they're better than the Arizona schools, and Colorado might be the worst team in the Power 5. So USC, I think they are the 5th best team in the country. They're just way too explosive on the perimeter and on offense. Number 5, USC. And then the top 4 hasn't changed. Number 4, Michigan. Number 3, Alabama. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 1, Georgia. Michigan blew out UConn 59-0. They get Maryland this upcoming week, a Maryland team that I'll get into in a second. I am a Maryland Terps fan. So I am going to talk about them a little bit here. They are 3-0, the Terps. Actually, I'll just do it now. Maryland beat SMU 34-27 in a game that they actually, to be honest, they look kind of sloppy in. Now the good news is that they got the win. The bad news is that I think they're going to be exhausted going into this Michigan game. That was a very stressful game, I think, for Maryland. So I think Michigan's going to beat Maryland. Is what I'm trying to get at by a lot. But I do think Maryland will score some points in this game. I think they're capable of it. I also think defensively, I thought Maryland took a big step. Maryland's defense faced 96 plays this past Saturday against SMU, and they played pretty damn good in that second half, in my opinion. Only giving up a touchdown. So in my opinion, I think Michigan is the toughest opponent yet against Maryland, but um, I think Michigan wins that game. Number 3, Alabama. You beat UL Monroe 63-7. Um, I don't know who you get this upcoming week. I believe I have to check to see. I know you get Arkansas in 2 weeks on the road. That's gonna be a big game. But Alabama, I think they didn't really prove anything to me. Ohio State. People are gonna criticize Ohio State's defense a little bit. Ohio State number 2. Toledo is a very respectable MAC program, so it does not surprise me that game was 28-14 at one point. But Ohio State's offense was just way too much for Toledo. I just think Ohio State is better than Alabama from what I've seen so far this season. It's number 2 Ohio State, and then Georgia, number 1. I mean, the way South Carolina celebrated when they scored that late touchdown tells you all you need to know about Georgia's defense and how good Georgia is. Georgia looks like the most dominant team. They faced Kent State, another respectable MAC program. Good luck, Kent State, for even getting points on the board. I mean, that should be the goal there. But Georgia, number 1. They did face a South Carolina team, which I think does have some issues, but to me, it's Georgia and everybody else. I mean, Georgia's only given up 10 points this season, guys. I mean, that is just ridiculous. So, number 1, Georgia. So, now let's get into the teams that dropped out. Number 20, Michigan State. I told you guys, this is a big I told you so. I said Michigan State. They were ranked number 11 in the AP poll. I thought that was way too high. I said this team is a borderline top 20 team at best, and it got proven against Washington. And we'll talk about Washington here. I know that's not in the teams I consider, but I also did consider them as well. Michigan State, I think, is a borderline top 25 team that will probably get a big win against somebody in the Big Ten, but that's all they're going to do this season. They're not a threat to win the Big Ten. They're not a threat to make a New Year's Six bowl, but they're a borderline top 25 team. Notre Dame in number 22. Yeah, I'm kind of done with Notre Dame. I know they beat Cal 24-17. But they face North Carolina. If they beat North Carolina, I'll be more than happy to put them back in the top 25. But in my opinion, I just feel like Notre Dame, the way they're heading towards a 7-5 season, in my opinion. So number 22 Notre Dame, number 24 Marshall. I don't know if a team has ever go ahead and beat Texas A&M, which I'll get into here in a second. And then turn around, not Texas A&M, beat Notre Dame. They go ahead and beat Notre Dame, and they turn around though and lose to Bowling Green. What a big win for Scott Leffler, the head coach of Bowling Green, who gets made fun of because he's a horrible head coach. I mean, my God, he might have saved his job for this season. Scott Leffler did, or Leffler, however the hell you pronounce his last name. Horrible loss for Marshall. Horrible loss for Marshall there. So they're dropped out of the top 25. Teams that were considered. If this was a top 26, Texas A&M would be number 26. Very impressive win at home against Miami. I still think offensively they have issues. Texas A&M does, but in my opinion, if they could get some wins in the SEC, get going, they'll be right back in the top 25. Pitt got a good win on the road against Western Michigan. As I said, Pitt is kind of hurt by West Virginia losing to Kansas, which I'll get into here in a second, because all of a sudden that kind of looks like it's going to cancel itself out. But I think they're a borderline top 25 team. I think they'll probably go above 500 ACC play. But Pitt, borderline top 25 team. Washington State, and I'll talk about Washington here as well, but Washington State, they covered the spread against Colorado State, which I told you they would. I know it's Colorado State, but Washington State's 3-0. I was going to be very high on this team until I saw it was returning, but it looks like even I was wrong about this team. Washington State, I think is a borderline top 25 team. Washington, I think is a borderline top 25 team. You look at Washington. They went ahead and basically beat Michigan State in kind of a blowout fashion. I know I consider a blowout to be 21 points. I think the final score of the game was 39-20, but I mean, you look at Washington State. I mean, not Washington State. You look at Washington. They're 3-0. So we'll see what happens there. I don't think they, as I said, I kind of think it's USC and everybody else in the Pac-12. But we'll see what happens. Kansas, Kansas, 3-0, Kansas. And let me tell you something about Kansas. This offense is legit for Kansas. This offense is scary good. Now defensively, I do think they have some issues, but I mean, as long as this offense is clicking, they can. I think Kansas. I was coming out and say it right now. I think Kansas is good. I think they're going to make a bowl game. I really do, and we'll see what happens. I don't think they'll beat most of the big boys, but they could go ahead and go 4-5 in the Big 12. And they still have a non-conference game, I believe, because they faced West Virginia and beat them. So they beat Houston by damn near 20 points. And by the way, who took Kansas plus A as their upset pick of the week? Me. So I was right on that. So Kansas, Syracuse. Big time win for Dino Babers. Big time win for him. I didn't pick Syracuse in my top 25 because of the opponents they faced, but let me tell you something. Dino Babers needed to win that game against Purdue, I think, because if y'all that don't know, athletic director for Syracuse came out and said 6 wins or else you're fired, basically. He needed to be, I think, Purdue too. Dino Babers needed to beat Purdue if he wanted to get to that 6 wins. And looking at the ACC, yeah, they could go 4-4 in the ACC. Look with that team, I think they can. So big win for Dino Babers. Purdue, I think, was overrated coming into the season. I always told you guys that. I said I wasn't buying into it, and they're 1-2. So Syracuse, borderline top 25 team. And then you look around at the group of 5. Um, and I'm just gonna be honest with saying this: Appalachian State, I think should be right there. I still think Air Force, who had a very disappointing loss to Wyoming, is going to be there at the end of the year. But Tulane looks like the best team in the group of 5 right now. They went on the road and beat Kansas State 17-10. They pulled, I think it was a 14-point underdog there, and they look like the best team in the group of 5 if you look at their resume. So and to be honest, they're really the only undefeated team in the group of 5. So I'm going to put Tulane as the teams I consider for the group of 5. But I think it's going to be one of those years the group of 5 team might be ranked number 25 and be like 10-2 or something. I know people are still going to consider Cincinnati. We'll see what they'll do. I'm sure they'll be in the pool at some point. But Tulane looks like the best team in the group of 5 record-wise, and if you look at their resume. So that's the teams I consider there for the top 25. Comment down below. Tell me your top 25. I always like hearing from you all. Thanks for watching the video. Hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe to your channel. Greatly appreciate you do that. McD the Beast signing off.